Hello, I'm Dr. Stephen Hassan, and I am doing a live stream, first one of 2025. I've been busy, so unable to do the last few weeks, but I welcome you. I'm on YouTube Live and Instagram Live, and welcome your comments and questions. I just saw a notification that David Lynch, the filmmaker, passed away. And a lot of people don't know this, but the David Lynch Foundation is a massive transcendental meditation promoter, trying to get into schools and work with vets. I'm a big critic of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and the TM organization, and have the story of Gina Catania in combating cult mind control. And I think 2025 is the year of the authoritarian cults. So I think the work of freedom of mind is more important than ever. And I am gearing up with my team. I'm hearing from more and more people offering to volunteer for our movement because we need to organize the resistance. And we're going to be doing more content and more live streams and answering questions. We're going to promote our YouTube and Substack and all that kind of good stuff. We have a new course workbook finally getting ready to be published, a new volume that was initially going to be a companion volume for the online course that I created, the CE course for clinicians, but we've really added a lot of content and it's really for everybody. And wow, where to start? But there's so much to say. So, what is an authoritarian cult? If you're new to my work, you know that I was recruited into the Moonies in 1974, and this year will be my 49th anniversary from my deprogramming from the Moonies cult and my work as a mental health professional and activist all these years. And it's the year of freedom of mind. It's your mind, and only you should control your own mind. And so we'll be teaching folks how to stay sane, and very importantly, how to build real life communities of people, because I think what the future will be is a bottom up movement of people around specialized interests with qualified experts. And I'll quote Dr. Yanir Bar-Yam of the New England Complex Systems Institute. I listened to a webinar he gave a few weeks ago, and Freedom of Mind has been associated with the New England Complex Systems Institute for a really long time now. But he basically said the two-party system is broken. And when you have a country where 90 million Americans don't vote, it's broken. A two-party system is broken. And what I learned when I researched the cult of Trump from Jeffrey Charlotte's work, The Family, was that this is the group, by the way, that does the national prayer breakfasts. This group was recruiting Republicans and Democrats into the cult called The Family. And I will definitely recommend watching the Netflix docuseries made by Jeff Charlotte, if you haven't already, that shows that top Democrat and Republican leaders have been co-opted and lobbied by this cult called the Family. Of course, Vladimir Putin, Russian influence. I've been talking about that for many years. and I have very reliable information that the chief of staff for Trump is Susan Wiles, who was a paid lobbyist for Putin and Xi, and was intimately involved with the 2016 Trump campaign that involved the Russians. Big surprise. So there's so many things going on right now that I can comment on. I think most importantly, I want to just say Dr. Baryam was talking about how we really don't need every citizen of the United States to learn hours a day of what's happening politically, because there's so much disinformation, so much chaos and overload. He talked about creating special interest groups where people are following their particular specialty, their interests, and working together from the bottom up. Basically, I believe we need to be focusing on planetary survival and not just survival of America, because it's clear that there's an agenda to take America down in terms of its world hegemony. People say, aren't you hopeful that Trump will be different? And I'm like, I don't know. After all of this time, the criminal, the grifter, the pedophile, not pedophile, but the serial rapist accusations against Trump, how much pathological lying he's done. I don't know. It sounds to me like, while I like to believe that things are going to get better, I just think so many bad actors don't want America to be the world leader it is. However, there's a lot of smart Americans who don't want chaos, who want to keep Social Security, want to keep Medicare, want stability and civility, and are just fed up with this hyperbolic polarization, psychological warfare. So all I can say is I'm not fleeing. I'm not leaving the country. And I've talked on previous live streams that when we're faced with a grave threat, the tendency is to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I'm fighting, and I'm definitely not fawning, meaning caving in or kiss the ring of the cult leader Donald Trump or the other cults. So and I want to just say that I really believe wholeheartedly. I'm not going to go on too long because I really want to do questions and answers. I believe that most people are good. I really believe in the golden rule. I really believe that there are ethical, legitimate religious groups that focus on love and compassion and honesty and social justice and human rights. So my thing is criticizing authoritarian mind control cults that control behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions. And my bytemodel.com 40 question anonymous free survey is a quick way for you to fill out for a healthy group or not, or a relationship. Get a number on the influence continuum of how healthy or how authoritarian it is, and we'll gather data. And for those people who are public, former members, activists, fill out the full bite model survey. Give us your name and identifying examples of the control of behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions. We're going to gather it together. We're going to evaluate it, and we're going to publish it in peer-reviewed journal articles and put on the map the bite model as a framework for understanding and scrutinizing whether a group is, deceptively recruiting, for example. So um, all I can say is those of us who've experienced firsthand what it's like to have our minds hacked, or those of us who were raised in authoritarian religious cults, for example, or authoritarian dictatorships who are now out of them, we have a unique story to share. And I want the public to understand that any notion that you have to be weak or stupid or uneducated to be grifted and seduced and socially influenced into a cult is it's incorrect. And that there's life after cult, and many, many people are so successful exiting their group. I had a fantastic interview with Lucas Wilson on my Influence Continuum podcast this week. He's a survivor of conversion therapy, years at Liberty University trying to make him straight when he was gay. And he wrote a book of stories, horrible stories, but true stories of survivors of this attempt to brainwash gay people into straighthood. And we have an ex-Jehovah's Witness who did his doctoral dissertation next Monday, Andre Jackson, who studied waking up from the headquarters of Bethel of the Watchtower Society. This is the group that you'll see two people in public places trying to recruit, saying it's Armageddon and join them. This is the group that doesn't believe in blood transfusions. So many great people are ex-members, and Claire N says she's bought 3 books, and they just arrived. I really recommend read Combating Cult Mind Control, then read Freedom of Mind, which is my book on how to talk to people involved with destructive cults and help them to reevaluate, and then The Cult of Trump. And soon we'll have the course workbook, which I am very proud to say is phenomenal. And guess what? We are translating Combating Cult Mind Control into Spanish, which I will publish. And we have brought on some really wonderful folks who are fluent in Spanish for those folks who feel more comfortable talking in their native tongue, and getting consulting in Spanish. So that's exciting for me too. And ultimately, I have so many ideas. I want to do a course on how to talk to people in MAGA effectively, a book. I want to do more on hypnosis, what's ethical hypnosis, what's unethical hypnosis, what's NLP. JC says, I'm trying not to panic, losing sleep again and feeling helpless, where to even start. I've been involved in local politics, and even our progressive leaders also co-opted by big money. JC, I hear you. I feel you. And start with taking care of yourself. So it may mean being offline, take a break, spend minimal amount of time with information coming in, sleep 7 to 9 hours. I like to listen to live music. I like to go dancing. I like to hang out with fun people, friends, do all kinds of activities. We need to keep ourselves restored. Yes, we are in a war. Psychological warfare has been leveled on us through our smartphones and our computers, but we've got to pace ourselves. So don't turn off the phone 2 to 3 hours before your normal bedtime. And for those of you who aren't sure about what good sleep hygiene is, you can actually Google it. But things like don't have caffeine late if it stimulates you. turn off your phones, cool environment, dark. They know so much now about how to get good sleep. And personally, I've had psychotherapy and hypnotherapy with trained mental health professionals, recorded hypnosis sessions that could help me go into a very deep state of sleep. And I have a little iPod Nano with earbuds that if I wake up in the middle of the night, I never had have trouble, by the way, falling asleep. My thing is waking up and I'm starting to problem solve. And I'm like, put in the earbuds, listen, and go back to sleep. So the key thing is, look, human beings are amazing. And if we have connection with other people that are trustworthy and honest to share our values, we're going to get through this period of time. And I got to tell you, I listened to Viktor Frankl's book, The Search for Meaning, a book that was I read in the must have been the late 60s, early 70s. Viktor Frankl survived 4 concentration camps. He was a psychiatrist. He passed away at age 92. Um, and he just described, with all that he was beaten and tortured and deprived of food and dehumanized, he said, the one thing is, nobody can take away my control of my own mind and my own experience. And what helped him survive those horrible years of incredible abuse was focusing on the little things he could control, and he focused on his wife, who he loved, who he didn't realize had already been killed, the books that he wanted to get out and write, including Man's Search for Meaning. If you haven't read Man's Search for Meaning, I found it incredibly inspirational. And it's like, if he could get through that, barely having any clothes, 9 men in with one blanket in one wooden bed. If he could get through all of that for years and live and go on to be, I think he got 29 honorary doctorates, a genius man. If he could do that, we're golden. We're lucky here. Brianna Wilcox Campbell says, I wrote a song after realizing how prevalent religious cult mindset in my culture, wildly healing, will send in a message after the live. So this is another thing. I love poetry, songwriting, music. I really want to encourage folks. Let's inspire each other. Let's lift each other up. And let's create a culture where we destigmatize having been in a mind control cult. And if you haven't, but you have a family member or a friend or someone that you care about who was, you're golden too, because share their experiences. And what I'd like to do in the future is more of these lives. And I'm totally open to having people come on with me and sing a song that they wrote and perform it. And we can help amplify more voices and build a freedom of mind community. Stacy Gregory asks, what's the best way to get through to a person who has been brainwashed? Great question. And I'll start by saying what not to do. What doesn't work is trying to persuade them with facts or attacking the leader, the doctrine, or the policy. Why? Because their cult identity gets activated and believes you're persecuting them. So it's a distancer, pardon me. What works is to be warm, respectful, curious, learn active listening skills if you haven't been trained in it, and just say, especially if it's a family member or a friend you've known for years, I I really want you in my life, and forgive me if I've called you names or I blocked you or muted you. Let's do a restart. And you must be very happy that Donald Trump won. Excuse me. And tell me what you're most excited about with the new administration. Tell me of the new nominees who you're most excited about and why. And listen. And build rapport and trust, and ask good questions and follow up with questions, because I predict there's going to be a lot of disillusioned MAGA believers in the coming months. I really think there'll be so many disillusioned, upset people. And also, very interestingly, this rift that's appeared between Steve Bannon and Elon Musk. And Bannon says he's going to take down Elon Musk, and Elon Musk has delusions of grandeur. He's also getting trolled, Elon Musk is, by right-wing extremists in Europe. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all of these strands, all these different cults in the cult of Trump, and you can look at chapter 7 and 8 of the book for a number of the big ones. And believe me, there are many more that I've done interviews about. I did have Opus Dei in it, by the way, as well as the family. Anyway, it's going to be very interesting to see and amplify the conflicts within the cult of Trump. So honestly, stay tuned. We're going to be doing a lot more lives and a lot more interesting things. Samantha Silera asks, I'm very curious. I'm sure you've already mentioned it at some point before, but I'm new to listening to you. How would you compare DJT to Hitler in this context? So, to answer you very briefly, there was a very famous social psychologist named Erich Fromm who was trying to characterize Adolf Hitler, and he came up with a concept called malignant narcissism, which isn't just narcissism, but it's people who are psychopathological too. People who think they're above the law, people who pathologically lie, are paranoid, sadistic, seek revenge. So there's a whole list, and the list is on my website, by the way, freedomofmind.com. If you haven't come to it, please do, and you can download the list. You can also download my influence continuum and bite model. So anyway, chapter 3 of The Cult of Trump, I used Erich Fromm's malignant narcissism criteria, but compared Donald Trump to my former cult leader, Sun Myung Moon, and Jim Jones of People's Temple, and Hubbard of Scientology. Regarding Hitler, there's a lot of parallelisms, but thank God millions of people have not been rounded up and exterminated. And I don't believe that's going to happen in the United States. So there's a lot of, blaming the other. And I'll quote Eric Hoffer's True Believer book, where he said the strength of a mass movement can be measured by its vividness and tangibility of its devil. So how do you mobilize people into a group to work together, create a devil, and that's what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are, the devils in the true believers of the MAGA movement. But how do we get through to people who are in the MAGA? Be nice. Be warm, find commonality. If they have children, you have children, talk about child rearing. If they like football, find out what team they like and share what you do and what you like about, with sports or whatever. And be human. I can tell you I've interviewed hundreds, if not thousands of people over the last 5 decades, and they always talk about what got them thinking was people who they were trained to hate or fear being nice to them, being a contradiction. people who are raised in homophobic groups like the Mormons, meeting gay people and seeing how wonderful they are and normal they are and how they can have loving marriages, and like so opposite what they were raised to believe. Um, how do you approach someone who seems like they're halfway out of a cult? So this really comes back to my core teaching of the last few decades, which is mind control is not 100%. Even if you're born in an authoritarian group, there's a part of your psyche that responds to genuineness, to honesty, to love, to compassion, and realizes when there's hypocrisy, when they're being hit corporally. I love you. I'm taking the belt out because I love you. Whip, whip, whip. People rebel against all of that. So the point I'm trying to convey is people have doubts. And the power move is always to get them in touch with their own doubts and make it feel safe where they can start verbalizing it. And how do you jumpstart this with someone who says they're in Scientology, for example? Don't criticize Hubbard or Miscavige, who runs it now, or the doctrine or the policies. Find out what group they think is an evil cult. The Moonies, Chinese communist brainwashing, pimps and traffickers. Find a different group that they would agree is bad, and then go into details of the behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. And by the way, you don't have to start out by calling it the bite model. You can just talk about things like sleep deprivation, changing your name, phobia indoctrination, thought stopping techniques. But the key thing is making it feel safe for people to interact and hear another perspective. I'd also like to direct people, I believe it's on my freedomofmind.com website under press, under the drop down. I have a TEDx talk I gave. How can I know if I've been brainwashed? And I outline a reality testing strategy people can use for themselves. And the first step is always take a vacation or take a time out, which often means turn off your computer and your smartphone for a week and sleep and eat and dance and go into the woods and swim and listen to music that you used to love. In other words, take a time out. Next step is learn about Chinese communist brainwashing. I recommend Robert J. Lifton's 8 criteria and then my bite model. The next step is, if you're in a mind control group, you're told never listen to ex-members and critics. Well, guess what? If you want a reality test, find an ex-member, highest up you can, and learn from them, and find critics that are credible, that have real credentials in the area that you're interested in, and listen to their facts and their stories, and you can gauge if there's veracity, if it's true. And then the next step is to go back in your mind to when you first got involved with the group. If it's Trump or MAGA, go back in your mind to what you thought you were signing on to, what you were believing, and ask yourself, if I knew then what I know now, would I have ever gotten involved? And this is the reality testing strategy, because typically people get deceived and defrauded into destructive authoritarian cults. Brianna Wilcox Campbell says, I absolutely adore how you encourage us to use warmth and care when we encounter cult mentality. Well, I'm telling you because I was a Moonie. And when people were nice to me, I'll never forget. I was fundraising in Manhattan. It was 90 degrees. I was carrying a heavy box of candles to sell. and somebody came over to me and said, "You look really hot and tired. Can I buy you a drink?" And, I was like, "Yes, please," because I was really thirsty. So I went inside and he bought me a drink. And then he said, "I'm just curious, when was the last time you talked with your mom?" And I said, "It's been a while." And he said, "Follow me." And back then, I'm going to date myself, there were rotary coin phones. He said, "Dial your home, I'll pay for it." And I think it was a dime or a quarter. And I called my mother. And it's what I call a mini intervention. I never knew his name, never saw him again, but just the act of kindness really touched me, and it put a chip in the destructive mind control indoctrination that the outside world was satanic and filled with demons. And I really am a love guy. I really think love is stronger than fear and mind control. And if you can not react and get triggered by people's, diatribes when they're in a mind control cult, and just see them as a good person one day. And I just want to comment, Mike Rinder passed away. And for those of you who don't know who that is, he was in Scientology for 46 years. And he was the former number 3 man, head of their Gestapo-like organization, the Office of Special Affairs. And he terrorized me and terrorized my friends. And he left. And he went on with Leah Remini, the actress, to do lots of, there was an A&E special that I appeared in the end of season 1, and went on to do podcasts. And when I met him for the first time on this TV set, I started to cry. I said, "It feels surreal that I'm sitting next to you. I was terrified of you for decades, and now here we are sitting together, dissing Scientology together." I was like, "Yeah, this is fantastic," right? EMS Supreme XOXO asks, "How can someone exactly hijack the mind? Through a psychic medium or a hypnotist?" Hypnosis can definitely hack. And if you believe that psychic mediums exist, there can be extraordinary vulnerability there. Because honestly, if anyone could prove they were psychic, they wouldn't need to charge money, and they would be very wealthy and be done. But that's not to say that we can't have intuitions and have extraordinary experiences that defy logic and rationality. Because as a poet, I've had the experience of fully formed poems come into my head where I'm just writing it down, and my ego didn't come up with the word phrasing and such. I just got into a flow state. And this is another point of myself. I believe in God. I don't believe in a supernatural, humanoid with a beard who's floating in the clouds. I think of the divine as just beyond our comprehension, and I believe that any supreme being would have to encompass all of the trillions of stars and galaxies out there. But let me tell you, I love to learn. I love to read books. I love to listen to podcasts. I'm always willing to change my mind on a topic. And when I'm talking to cult members, I'm always telling them, "Hey, I believe what I believe, but change my mind. Tell me your story. Give me facts that make sense to me." And as I'm talking, I do active listening, where I repeat back to them what I heard them say periodically to make sure that that I got it correct, and they feel good that I'm really listening to them. And then I like to just ask hypothetical questions like, and this is one of my favorites with Moonies, is I'm just curious. I'd say, what do you think you would do if Father, meaning Moon, he's passed away, but what would you do if Father said one day, I have a confession to make. I've gone to a psychiatrist. I'm on psychiatric medication now, and I realize I'm not the Messiah. Go home. And when I've asked that in the past to active Moonies, their first reaction is he would never say that. And then I'd agree. I'd say, yep, he would never say that. But I'm just curious what your reaction would be if he did. And I said, would you obey him and listen to him and leave, or would you stay in the group and disobey him? And I'd watch their faces, and it would be like steam coming out of their ears because I was asking a hypothetical that they never thought of before, and they wouldn't know how they would answer. Similarly, for religious people, I would say, what would happen if you're praying and God said to you, and you knew it was God, it's time for you to leave the group? Would you stay loyal to the group, or would you follow what God wants for you? And again, your tonality, your facial expressions matter a lot. But if you're genuinely curious what they would do, it makes them think. And here's another tip. When you ask a good question, be quiet. Like, don't wait 3 seconds and then ask another question. Like, just be quiet till they come up with an answer. And sometimes it takes 5 full minutes for someone to come up with an answer. But that's the goal of my whole approach, empowering people to think for themselves, right? If the goal is to empower them to think for themselves, give them time to think. Alicia Loves Nature asks, how can we stop corporate propaganda brainwashing that's ever present from birth in the USA? Well, I started the cult of Trump with Edward Bernays, Freud's nephew, who wrote the 1928 book Propaganda, and it was Bernays who did the first connection with psychology and business and psychology and political campaigns. I believe he did the first presidential campaign. And Goebbels of Nazis wanted to hire him, but used his stuff anyway. But Bernays's thing, and all of Madison Avenue has followed his advice, is you don't sell people products, you sell them the need for the product. And then you offer the product as a solution to the issue. And I highly recommend, if you haven't watched Adam Curtis's The Century of the Self, I believe it's on YouTube for free. It's a 2-parter. It's all about Madison Avenue wanting people to become consumers, to buy things that they don't need and may not even be good for them. And we were all raised in this culture of buy, buy, buy. And we need to get back to basics. We need to get back to common sense. We need to realize that corporations that don't have community values and only are looking to have profit are going to lie to us. The tobacco industry knew for decades that that smoking caused cancer, but they hired experts to say that there's no definitive evidence. But there was definitive evidence. There's been definitive climate science for at least 50 years, and the Moonies, the Washington Times has been at the heart of it, according to David Lipsky's fine book on climate science denial called The Parrot and the Igloo. They hired so-called experts to say there's no proof that it causes global warming. And now we have wildfires destroying a lot of LA. We have polar vortexes and snowstorms and ice storms in Texas. But people are like, no, there's no such thing as climate change. Hello, they're lying. And I got to tell you, I was listening to the New York Times audio app, and guess what? The petroleum industry is doing their ads on the New York Times about how great the petroleum and gas industry is. And, but you have to, it's your mind. You have to be able to label it. This is nonsense. This is BS. And understand it's your mind and you should control it and not just follow what you're hearing on TV, on social media, etc. Matthew Price asks, what are the key differences between traditional exit counseling and the strategic interactive approach? Well, you're talking to a guy who went through forcible deprogramming, did voluntary exit counseling, and then when the internet came around, I was like, this isn't going to work anymore. And so I had to come up with another approach, which I call the strategic interactive approach. And how it differs from the old exit counseling, which was experts, content experts, ex-members of a particular group would meet voluntarily with someone, ask for several days, and present their stories, share Robert Lifton's model, etc. But it had to be voluntary. But with the internet, where information was everywhere, what I learned is that I need to work with family members, friends, and ex-members, coach them, and organize them to do a systematic, ethical influence campaign to help the person to think for themselves. So in other words, instead of the family saying, would you agree to talk to Steve Hassan? And then they go online and they Google Steve Hassan, then they go to the cult leader or one of the sub leaders and says, my mother wants me to talk to Steve Hassan. And they're like, oh, Satan, don't talk to him. So we cut all of that out, because with family members and friends, understanding the do's and the don'ts and getting coaching in a systematic way, it really works. But it's not a quick fix. It requires time, education. People are loving to take my 9-hour course that it supplements my books. Because the more you understand this, what cults are, destructive cults are, and what they aren't, the more you practice talking to people in mind control cults, the better you get at it, frankly. And I always tell people, hey, you're trying to get someone out of Scientology. Next time you meet some Jehovah's Witnesses on the street corner, practice, because they're someone else's kids. You never know. Planting a few seeds, asking some questions, being warm. And that's what I'm wanting to cultivate, is a culture of caring and reaching out and helping others. So the strategic interaction approach is detailed in the Freedom of Mind book. And another key feature is chapter 10. I talk about phobias and how they're different from legitimate fears, and my 3-step phobia intervention that people can do with someone in a cult. And when it comes to how to deliver that intervention, it's always more effective if a family member or a friend had a phobia and got over it. And the cult member knows, oh, Aunt Lily had a phobia of dogs, and now she can have puppies on her lap and love it. that person has a lot of credibility to talk about how to cure a phobia. And it's the universal mind control technique, honestly. That when you're in one of these mind control groups, you can't visualize, you can't imagine yourself leaving and being happy and fulfilled. You can only imagine terrible things happening to you, everybody turning on you, or demons possessing you, etc. So seeing former members who are happy and fulfilled puts a little bit of a crack in that programming, that all or nothing, black and white, us versus them. Matthew Price asks, can you summarize the findings of you and Alan Shefflin's chapter, Understanding the Dark Side of Hypnosis, in the new Rutledge volume? Matthew, how'd you know about that? I have the book back here, actually. It's a textbook on hypnosis, and Alan and I actually did 2 chapters. Alan focused on CIA and MK Ultra, of which hypnosis was the single effective technique that they came up with. LSD was not reliable, and electroshock therapy and all these other things. I focused on Scientology as the case example extraordinaire, because people don't know that Hubbard was a hypnotist, and that the whole system of the training routines is a formulaic application of hypnotic principles to break down people's critical faculties, induce an altered state, which makes them more suggestible. In the chapter, I not only talk about Scientology, I talk about Nexium and neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. I see this rampantly all over the internet. And while we're talking about hypnosis, I have to comment, Andrew Tate's been in the news a lot and connecting with the cult of Trump. And I watched 2 documentaries on Andrew Tate, and one of them had footage of a Russian hypnotist that was actually influencing the people who made the documentary. Their thesis was he was controlling Tate. I'm not 100% about that, but for sure, the hypnotist was programming all the boys, the bros who are in the Andrew Tate cult, to be traffickers and pimps over women and abuse women. So what I want to say is, most of the chapters in this book are about ethical hypnosis by mental health professionals, and how great it is for helping pain control, for doing all kinds of extraordinary things. I want to do a book on hypnosis. I want to do a course on hypnosis, and we're looking to get more and more, frankly, subscribers, supporters of Freedom of Mind, so we can keep our activities going. And I don't need to do individual cases, so that I can have more time to develop content that will have a bigger reach than working one-on-one with a family. And in the meantime, I'm training people who want to be Freedom of Mind independent contractors on my methodology and supervising them. So I'm very excited about that. And let's see, Mark Fisher says, thanks for all your work with John Atack and Spike Robinson over the years. You really helped me. Thank you, Mark. John's one of my dearest friends and colleagues. He's the world authority on Scientology. He lives in Nottingham, England. He has his YouTube channel, and he's written a great book, Opening Our Minds. I've done numerous interviews with him. You can check out on my Substack. And Spike Robinson helps him and helps me with my podcasts and other video and digital stuff. And I'm really putting the call out. We want to build a community. So if you have special skills and if you have a few hours a week and you want to help us and come up with content, come up with ideas for reaching different populations. Oh, and if you haven't checked out bitemodel.com yet, we have this project that I'm doing. I was made a Fielding Fellow. That's where I got my second master's and doctorate. It's a shortened version of my doctoral research, 40 questions that if you answer them for a healthy group or an unhealthy group or a group you're not even sure about or a relationship that you're not sure about, fill it out. It's anonymous, it's free, and it will give you a number on the influence continuum. If you haven't yet seen the influence continuum, this you can download for free on freedomofmind.com under Learn, as well as the full bite model. And if you are an activist and don't mind being public with your name and your information, fill out the full bite model. Give us your information. We're going to gather databases. I'd love to have 1,000 ex-Scientologists and have a 8.7 or to 9.6 of authoritarian control on Scientology, or any group that comes your way or that you've experienced. And again, healthy groups too. I'm very interested, for the sake of science, to show that the bite model doesn't fit healthy groups. In other words, they give informed consent. They respect your conscience. They don't say you can't read critical literature or talk to ex-members. You're free to leave without fear or someone coming after you. So we want to create an awareness about destructive social psychological influence techniques. This is very different than what I'm seeing out all the time about teaching media literacy, teaching people about disinformation and deep fakes. That's a part of it. But the bigger part of it is this assault on people's identities, disrupting people's sense of self, and this programming and hacking into creating a new pseudo identity that's dependent and obedient. So all I can say is the time is now. If you've left the group 20 years ago, never read Combating, it's on Audible, it's on Kindle or digital and other modalities, as well as paperback. Do you start unpacking it? Because so many people have left their group and kept the experience in a closet. And many of these people have gone into the cult of Trump because they didn't process their destructive mind control experience. So how do you get them out of the cult of Trump? Talk about the group they were in first. Help them learn about it. I can't tell you how many ex-Scientologists believe in Trump. Ex-Moonies believe in Trump. Ex-JWs believe in Trump. The key is getting to the underbelly and helping people to process. Earth to Anthony asks, how do you draw a line with showing warm tolerance when listening to people's more harmful or bigoted beliefs? When can firm social consequences be more useful than polite, curious attitude? Honestly, I really believe in ethical influence and doing what works and trying to be, what you're believing in is bad. This is not going to help people get out of a mind control cult programming situation. So you may feel morally superior to espouse that you know what the truth is. But honestly, I like, for example, Adam Grant, the organizational psychologist from Wharton, who has a great podcast that that I listen to religiously, even though he's not religious at all. That's a joke. He did a great book called Think Again. And the thesis of the book is separate your ego from your beliefs and be prepared to change your mind. It shows that you're healthy. It shows that you're growing. It shows that you're willing to consider out of the box ideas and that you might be wrong. In which case, okay, new information has arrived. Yep, I spent years believing in QAnon, but now I realize it was a psyop, which it was, and it's bogus, and time to exit. So again, come back to your bodies, come back to the here and now, come back to thinking for yourself with an internal locus of control, and having an attitude that anything that's legitimate will stand up to scrutiny. And your right is to question everything. Question me. And if I'm wrong on something, I had somebody find something in the cult of Trump and he said, I double checked this and it's wrong. And damn, he was right. And we edited it in the re-release with George Conway. It had to do with Jim Jones and what his final words were as people were being commanded to murder their children and themselves. And I honestly, to this day, still don't know how something that was incorrect got into the book. But it did. And I corrected it. And thank you. And please go on my website. If you find any links that don't work, email us. If you have ideas for guests that would be really good for me to highlight or to bring on live streams, let's build a community of freedom of mind is my biggest appeal. And as we're wrapping up this live, I just want to thank my team. Everybody's part-time, but everybody is really dedicated to helping raise consciousness and awareness that the human mind can get hacked and it can come back to healthy functioning. And we need to train mental health professionals. We need to train the media. We need to understand that we're in psychological warfare. I don't know if people are aware just how much hacking Chinese hackers have done to America's telecom industry. But the US government earlier this year said use Signal or WhatsApp for messaging because our telecoms have been hacked and it hasn't been fixed yet. It's like these kinds of data we need to share with each other. And the bottom line is don't walk around on your phone. Like make eye contact with humans, say hello, smile, hi, how are you? And I moved to Northampton, Massachusetts in September, and I really like that people make eye contact and they say hello here. And cars actually stop for you when you want to cross the street. I think that's just a wonderful community, values thing that should be practiced everywhere. And the best way to influence people is to role model. Just be a good person, be honest, be trustworthy, have integrity, be kind. I love the random acts of kindness, ethos. You see somebody needing help, open the door for them, offer to lift the package if someone's infirm or elderly or something. And by the way, if you have retired and you want to do something, there's lots of stuff. We have lists that we would like to get accomplished. So again, if there's any interest in devoting even an hour a week or 5 hours a week to promoting the freedom of mind message and our social media presence, please let us know. Because honestly, it's going to be a bottom-up movement for years to come because of the just corruption that's infiltrated both parties, even though, there's, I think really good people in the Democratic Party, like Jamie Raskin is head of the House the Judiciary Committee. He's the only politician who's read all three of my books and my doctoral dissertation and showed a willingness to learn about cults, even though I was after him for years. Have a public hearing, have a congressional hearing on cults. We could put together a great panel, but the party didn't want to or couldn't. Anyway, it's 3 o'clock. I want to thank Cami. I want to thank Jim. I want to thank everybody who's helped. And we're going to go back to hopefully Wednesday afternoons, 3 to 4, but maybe we'll do more and maybe shorter ones. And please come and check out my Substack. And if you are willing to uh, dedicate $8 a month to supporting the freedom of mind. The goal we're working on at the moment is 3,500 subscribers at $8 a month will cover our operating expenses for the month and will free me up to generate so much more content. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk again soon. Stay hopeful. Rock and roll. Thanks, everybody. And now I have to figure out how to end the stream. And I'm not sure how to end the stream. And now.